Boom, Danny Buchan. What a ride this is.
Governing bodies don't recognise motorsport as a team sport because it's potentially the one athlete in a car or on a bike, which is absolutely crazy when you think there is, 100,000 plus people employed in the motorsport industry just in the UK alone.
The most memorable moment was my big concussion there. I said, great. Lovely.
She remembers
it,
you don't.
Yeah, thumbs up. Yeah, I don't remember it. I'd make them rock, paper, scissors for it. I would.
That'd be the
Best of three. You can't argue with rock, paper, scissors, can you? Literally.
You cannot get it wrong, man. Got absolutely thrashed by Lewis Hamilton when I was a kid. Told me that
He might remember this.
He will not. I was well too far back.
Oh, that was when you streaked, didn't you? You got up the start straight to close on. Oh, no. Okay, not that one.
It was a team spending six figures in amateur karting. Six figures.
It's fake.
So.
It's fake, mate. Fake personality.
Fake.
Persona.
No.
Yeah, go on. Yeah, you cheat.
Boom, Danny Buchan. What a ride this is.
Hi, and welcome to Season 1, Episode 6 of Pushing the Limit podcast with me, Danny Buchan. Today's guest, we are going a little bit off-piste here. I think it's quite a crucial time to be talking about this kind of thing. Gary Lee Hoebeeck. Gary, welcome, mate.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you. Love that.
He's really got this thing about being called Gary Lee.
My kids are going to lose
Gaza,
it.
welcome.
Cheers.
Mate, first of all, introduce yourself and tell us, obviously, about yourself and your interest in motorsport.
Cool, yeah, so I'm Gary Lee. I've worked in motorsport for just over a decade now, which is quite cool, been really privileged. So started off at Autosport for quite many years and then started my own business, Pro 53, up 5 years ago, just getting involved in sponsorship and working with athletes to try and support them. Had some good successes and some not so good.
Some failures working
Yeah,
with
some
me.
failures,
No.
yeah, exactly, yeah. I won't talk about them, yeah.
Yeah.
And then since about 2019, me and you have been working together. Got chatting over LinkedIn, I believe it was, wasn't it? Just from being local boys, and now also co-founder of the Pro 83 Sports Academy as well, which we'll chat about. But yeah, thanks very much for having us.
And your love for motorsport, let's say, isn't it? Because obviously
I
it's not
love
even just
motorsport.
motorbikes, is it? Like you love car racing.
Motorsport, yeah, in general, yeah. I grew up watching World Superbikes and Formula One, and then competing in karting as a kid. Got absolutely thrashed by Lewis Hamilton when I was a kid. Told me that
He might remember this.
He will not. I was well too far back. It was double digits, so just I grew up with an absolute love for motorsport, and from a spectator as well, then competing on an amateur level, and then as I got older, I got more and more intrigued in the commercial side of the business, and that's where I joined Autosport, and then subsequently you're here today.
Yeah, and obviously something it's so close to me anyway, and I love talking about it in general because I guess like being involved with business, obviously there's such a crossover with finding like personal partners and dealing with that kind of thing. And it's something I've not really seen many people speak openly about, is it? Like I see a lot of people asking for sponsorship in a way that's doesn't benefit people. And obviously something that we'll talk about anyway. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's a great topic of conversation because we're currently at the start of the season. Times are changing, like businesses are changing. Obviously, the way people are advertising is changing, and it's something that I've really wanted to speak about. And obviously, having a conversation with yous,
Dangerous, yeah.
No, but having a
Dangerous,
conversation
yeah.
about it is mega because I really want to give people, like fans, an insight, and people who are listening, an insight into, I guess, A, the struggles, B, obviously the benefits of commercial partnerships, because obviously we've had some success with companies, and like for me being a racer, like the ambassador roles and things like that. But obviously, yeah, I mean, I just wanted to really get into how the partnerships work, and obviously better way to start than talk about the young talent, like obviously bringing young talent in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, the world's a crazy place at the moment where, we've got so many different ways of digesting media and digesting information. And I think, the sports that are doing it really well have recognised that. I think I was looking at the NBA, and even, Formula One now has done a great job of it, where the NBA actually have it where they have Twitter accounts that are non-licensed accounts. So they don't actually pay for the content, like a Sky Sports does for Formula One or Eurosport does for British Superbikes. And actually the NBA retweet and repost those things because they recognise that that's an audience that they probably wouldn't have unless they were there. So they're kind of like, pirate channels. So I think you just have to be really open to everything. But in that instance as well, you need to be careful not to go down the rabbit hole of giving too much over. I think so many times when you're looking for partners or looking for sponsorship as an athlete or as a team or as an organisation, you can really go down the rabbit hole a little bit with looking at all the information possible. Whereas actually, it's really simple. You just ask the question. But it's such a great time to be involved in motorsport. We've had the hardships of the past couple of years of sport being really affected, especially unless it was mainstream sport, being massively affected. So you got to recognise the global economic situation. However, that being said, there's not many other sports that can put you in front of this many potential customers. As our sport can. Talking about superbikes specifically, and that's where I think a lot of younger athletes need more guidance from a marketing perspective, because parents and friends own businesses have forked in a lot of money, and that's been a great solution. Yet when that cash is not available, then you get to a point where you've got a number of athletes that don't actually know how to approach businesses from a business side of it. Yeah. And I think as us as business owners outside of the motorsport sector as well gives us a bit of an advantage there, because you kind of think, how would I want to be approached? You have to have that mindset of how would I want to be approached as a business owner. Not necessarily what would work for my business, because there's so many different industries out there. But yeah, it's a really intriguing point, and something that I think we'll go into in a little bit more detail today.
Yeah, it's funny because first time I had a meeting with a sponsor, I literally went in there and we sat down. And it was through my friend, and he was like, "Oh, yeah, I've got a guy who actually went on to sponsor me for quite a number of years, Cliff at Wembar," and yeah, I went in there and he was like, "All right, then how much do you want then?" And obviously, up until that point, me and my dad had been quite lucky with business. Well, I wouldn't say lucky. He's put a lot of time and effort in. I hate saying that word, lucky. He grafted and put a lot of time and effort in, and I was probably lucky enough to have his support. And yeah, Cliff was like, "How much do you want then?" And me and my dad was like, "We've never asked for money before. We don't really know." But at that point, we was paying for our expenses to race. And obviously, as you go on in your career, obviously I'm a paid motorcycle racer now, but still I have a lot of outgoings in terms of what it costs to go racing, and there's a lot of things you have to pay for as a motorbike racer to go racing. And I think the higher level you get, obviously the more things have to cost in terms of what you do, your training and all the little benefits and the extras you get. But yeah, I mean, I totally get it's so different. Obviously I've got this as a topic to talk about on my notes, but starting a kid off at grassroots racing, it's a really horrible thing. But when someone says to me what do I need to go motorbike racing, you genuinely need to have, whether it's parents with good budget or somebody around you that's going to help you, because in our sport it's so expensive. When you're in the grassroots racing, if you crash a bike, if you write a bike off, it can be £15,000, can't it? And you're most families who have other kids, they can't just pay. They just can't afford to just pull 15 grand out of the year if they've got normal jobs and they're doing all they can. Is it?
It's such a tricky one, because and as much as this sport is an amazing sport, and anything we talk about today, I want to really really push that. But it's very very different from other grassroots sports and any other sport. We've talked about it at length. The difference between a couple of £100 to register for a football club, say for a child, to £10,000-15,000 to make an entry into motorcycle racing or karting. I remember being in my early teens, and a team that I was racing against, and bearing in mind we were just a dad and son and a mechanic karting, and there was a team spending six figures in amateur karting, six figures, because they wanted to be the next Michael Schumacher at the time, or Mika Häkkinen, etc. But or Lewis Hamilton even now. But yeah, it's so different, and that's where it pains me a bit, because I think that turns away a lot of potential athletes and a lot of people, the next generation. But fundamentally, that needs to filter down from organisations, not necessarily just championships and teams, but actually like UK sport.
Yeah.
I've had a number of conversations, and unfortunately, a number of governing bodies don't recognise motorsport as a team sport, because it's potentially the one athlete in a car or on a bike, which is absolutely crazy when you think there is 100,000 plus people employed in the motorsport industry just in the UK alone. Yeah,
my team's 10 people, let's say, straight away, that go every weekend guaranteed. It's a team sport, isn't it? Obviously, you're really out there on your own as such, racing bikes, and if you crash, you crash. But you're still a team. You can't do it without having a team, can you?
Yeah, you look at all, the MotoGP, Formula One, those sides of it. They have thousands of people working for them. across them, and majority of them in terms of car perspective are based in the UK.
Yeah.
So that's something which needs to change, and I'm all for being part of that or supporting anyone who wants to do that to try to get it to recognise, because there is so much funding and so much available to sports from a young athlete perspective of pushing, increasing the audience of the sport as well. There are so many great things that are being done.
Yeah.
But just unfortunately at the moment, as we stand here now, is that motorsport isn't included in that.
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, like, I was lucky that when I was younger, I was club racing, and obviously, again, it was costing a lot of money. And then I went and somebody said, "Oh, go and have a chat with Nick Morgan, because he kind of will be able to sort of give you a bit of an honest advice about where you should maybe go with your career." Yeah. And with that conversation, I had two options, and Nick gave me a chance to run out of his garage, and Nick was kind of the one who I would say I credit for my career. Obviously, I had to ride the bike, but Nick was the person that gave me that opportunity. And without that, like, now there seems to be a lot more people. Like, obviously, you've got the MLAV Academy, you've got the Pro 83 Academy, we've got a few academies around now that are kind of trying to push the young talent, which I think it needs. But ultimately, I think, like, it's clear as well, like, I want to be clear that we're not criticising the sport here and slagging it off.
Absolutely,
like, we're just talking, and I would love to be proactive in helping, obviously, the younger generation. But it'd be great if we could have, like, if there was some sort of governing body that just put like a funding in place. Like how I see the kids in Spain, they come after school. When you're at Cartagena spinning laps, you come in after school, you can see them there in a little school uniform. They come off, they get off their uniform, they put on their levers, they go out and they ride mini motors till the sun comes down, they have some food, go home. And they push it so much out there. And I know that health and safety laws are probably a little bit different, but they just push the younger talent. And it's clear to see that when you look at like the MotoGP grid, like whether it's Moto3, Moto2 or MotoGP, it's quite clear to see, like, a lot of them are Spanish, Italian, and the rest of it. And I think it's such I mean, obviously, if you wanted to let your son or daughter ride at 3 or 4 years old, that's fine. I get that. I wouldn't let Brody ride a bike. He's 2 now. He'd be too loose. He'd be
so
full
loose.
gas, mate. Full gas or no gas. But yeah, I guess, like, for me, if you asked me the question and said, what would you like to see? I'd love to see, like, a bit of, I know, and I'm saying this loosely because I know there's a lot of things that would have to be put into place for it to happen. But I'd love to see, like, a main governing body come in and say, right, we're going to put a pot of money together for like 3, 4, 5-year-olds to start, whether it's racing around Brands Hatch car park on a weekday, you know what I mean? Like something like that.
Making it more accessible, because, ultimately, with motorsport, it's not as accessible as others. You can't just go and buy a ball, whether it's cricket, whether it's tennis, whether it's football, rugby. These are very accessible sports and, participant sports. Yeah. High-level participant sports. So there's that side of it, but then you have to then make sure you're doing more to push the sports, And, we could even go broader and say we're speaking specifically about motorsport at the moment, but there are a number of sports which are not as accessible as they should be. It's easy for us to sit here and say that because we're not the ones having to put the money into it.
Yeah, exactly.
However, when there are a number of, grants available and funding available for things such as what we're doing, it's, I'd really love to see that as well. That, just to try and get it, more, I've done a couple of talks in schools where talking to people about how you can get involved in motorsport, and, I'm a perfect example, and, you are as well. And, you take a lot of other athletes or people that wanted to be an athlete that either couldn't make it or didn't have the money. There are so many other opportunities to get involved in motorsport, whether it be as an engineer, from a commercial side of it. There's so many different avenues that you can be involved in the sport. So even if you're not able to make it as an athlete, if you wanted to be one day, then you can be involved in it. Yeah, I think that would be really good to see a push from that side of it, and not necessarily just about the funding it. But yeah, it's a real shame. However, hopefully things will be changing.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be great because I see, as you go through your career anyway, you would have seen it in the years you've worked in motorsport. You see guys there and they're not there all of a sudden, and it's sad because obviously when you're young, you put a lot of time, a lot of effort. Your parents put a lot of money in, and it's a tough sport to break through. Obviously, if you looked at the British Superbike Championship, there's 30 places on the grid. If you've got 3 or 4 different clubs in the UK producing like 40 riders each class, let's say, like there's, again, the numbers are quite high, and to get an opportunity in British Superbike is obviously quite difficult. So it is hard, and I guess maybe sometimes that has to happen for it to filter through and the people to get through. I don't know, but yeah, I just think there's such a big thing that could be done in terms of just like getting their main big bodies on just to help bring the young talent on. I'd
Yeah.
love to see it. I'd just love to see the kids. Like I don't know how it would work. I don't know.
The National Lottery is a great example. You know, the National Lottery put in millions and millions of pounds into UK sport, and that's used to, you know, for some great projects. So it would just be nice to get a piece of the pie.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how it'd work. And obviously, there's people out there that probably know. And maybe if there's any of the governing bodies listening, I'd love to have a chat. Genuinely love to have a chat and just get your thoughts on it, because I'd love to know how we could look at helping motorsport. Because it's not even about like our generation; it's future generations. Like, if you said to me, how would you get Brody into motorbike racing? Obviously, I would probably go the same way I went with my own career, which was I started off at motocross.
Yep.
But even that, like, it cost a fortune. Like, we was riding all every weekend, and
Well, I put it to you that imagine if both of your children or both of my children wanted to get involved in motorsport.
yeah,
It would come to a point for most families of, you know, you'd have to choose one or none.
I'd make them rock paper scissors for it. I would.
That'd be the best.
Best
way
of
to do
three. You can't argue with rock paper scissors, can you? Like,
No,
literally,
you cannot get it wrong. No,
it's
you can't get it wrong.
yeah,
Go on.
yeah, go on. Yeah, you cheat. But yeah, it's such it's such a part of me that just wants to give something back to the sport in that way. Just obviously bringing the young talent through, and that's where the Pro 83 Academy come from.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's the important thing, not just to talk about it, to actually,
Yeah.
you know, make action, you know, take action and look at how we can do things to support that. You
Yeah.
mentioned there are a couple of other opportunities as well that are done. I think that, you know, the blueprint comes from the VR46 Academy.
Definitely.
For how that, you know, obviously there's a significant backing for that, but it just goes to show you the fact that, you know, Pecco won the MotoGP world title last year. You know, in that short span of time, they've been able to produce a world champion.
Yeah.
Or multiple world
And
champions.
multiple, yeah, because obviously they've had like the
Yep.
other guys, Moto 2, Moto 3.
Moto 2, Moto 3, yeah, exactly. And that's brilliant. You know, and that is the real blueprint of actually what can be achieved when the money's used correctly in the right way. And I think that's where, from the Pro 83 side of it, you know, me and you come together and, you know, was like, okay, you know, I think that we can collectively, between us, from a commercial as well as from an athlete's perspective, look at how we can support the next generation and future generations.
Yeah.
You know, as little as it can, you know, may be, or as large as it may be, you know, there is definitely something which we can do for them to put, you know, an arm around their, you know, shoulder, and also from a commercial side of it, you know, promote them and give them that availability from funding so they can actually compete.
And that's how Pro 83 Academy was born,
Exactly,
wasn't it?
yeah.
It was obviously, we just thought, well, we need to maybe try and do something and put back into the ether of motorbike racing, and it was that, weren't it? It was like, yeah. Let's go with it.
If we can help 2 or 3 riders, you know, a year where we're able to find investment for them from, you know, commercial partners that either believe in the journey and believe in what we're doing, but also see the commercial value of it. So, you know, as a business, they can see how being part of something like this not only is sort of a goodwill factor for them, but also as well from a marketing perspective, show how then they can use that to communicate with potential customers.
Yeah.
I think that's the real key thing. You know, that goes back to your point about, you know, lobbying for money, where, you know, athletes asking for money as opposed to showing businesses
the real value
and actual values, you know.
Because the value's mad. Like when I talk to potential sponsors about getting on board with me, or whether we're talking about ambassador roles and things like that, like, you could list like 5 or 6 things straight away, but the list is endless. Like, there's so much you can do for companies in terms of the marketing side of things and how much value they get. Like, that's something I wanted to speak to you about, but we'll finish. Obviously, I love talking about the academy, but so the basis of the academy is obviously we're helping the guys. Obviously, I've got the experience with the racing side, the training side of that. You've got the experience of the commercial side of things, and it's mad, isn't it? Like, we've got obviously 3 riders in that. And it's exciting, isn't it? Like, watching them grow.
Yeah, it's brilliant because we're able to educate them slightly, I think, and show them the importance of how the on-track and off-track really come hand in hand. You know, I think that there's, you know, I won't say names, but, you know, people won't take offence to saying that there are some athletes that have made it across all sports where what they do off of the field
big part
or
of it,
track has probably outweighed what they should have probably achieved in the game.
Yeah.
You know, whether it be, you know, football, rugby, tennis, or motorsport, because of the, you know, I think that, you know, there's a real, you know, they talk about how people change the game, you know, like Rossi changed the game, Michael Schumacher changed the game, you know, when they came into motorsport because of the way they took fitness seriously, or, you know, in Marc Marquez. You know, you always get that next generation, but it's not necessarily just what they do on track, it's all of the thousands and thousands of hours away from it, but also then being able to place themselves commercially. You know, I was thinking from a business side of it, if you're an athlete, and you've got, say, across the whole of the BSB, let's, just say there's 150 riders across the main sort of three
I have
categories.
to be in full flow to get my quick maths going, mate. Do you know what I mean? So I'm not in full flow.
Not on a bike. You've got to give a business the reason why they should be partnering with you to communicate with the same audience that other 149 can give you, for instance, as a, just use it as a nice round figure. Yeah. So and that's where I think from my side of it, having been a fan of motorsport, but also in a business perspective, are able to, educate the riders and their families as well, because they play a massive part in this, not necessarily just from a funding perspective, but with the younger riders in supporting them, showing them the difference between asking for money and showing someone a good partnership stroke ambassador opportunity. And then, from your side of it, you've been able to show our riders what it takes from an off-field perspective as an athlete. I think we're quite good. We've been fortunate that we've picked a great bunch of lads that do take it seriously and do want to make it to the top, and they really listen well, and they've taken that all on board. And I think you can just see from what Zach's done in the past year after his accident, how he's come back and how he applied himself. That's been amazing to see.
Been a hard journey, but he's done really well.
Yeah, really difficult. But so and that's the instant. That's the blueprint of our academy. Is if we can help them put themselves in a right commercial side of it, but also as well perform on track.
I think that's a big part. The off-track part is so big because on track, it's a very clear goal. You want to win. You want to beat everyone.
If you're not first, you're last.
Yeah, if you're not first, you're last. But I don't have to do with my hands. But yeah, I mean, if you obviously you've got to win. You've got the goal is to win. It's a performance-based game, and if you're not winning, it makes your life very difficult. Obviously, negotiating contracts and got further in your career. But I think the big part of it for me was always if I can do a good job on track, if I can be approachable, always level-headed, always grounded. Like my dad probably done a good job with keeping me grounded, and I think that has played a big part in my career. And I'd like to think that when my career is finished, I'd still like to have an involvement in motorsport, and I'd be lucky enough to maybe work with some companies in that motorsport arena because of how I've been. But I think the off-track part is so big because, like you say, like talking to sponsors, talking to partners, talking to other people, like you have to kind of leave everything on the track. And I know it's so hard, like obviously when you're young as well, like even when you're older, like obviously I'm 29 now, but even if you have a bad race, old. But if you have a bad race, you kind of go, oh man, I don't really want to talk to anyone. I want to just sit in here on my own. I want to shut myself off to the world. But one thing that we make quite clear to the boys is, listen, it's fine. Like you have to have bad weekends to learn. And obviously failure is part of learning anyway. Yep. And I'm not going to preach because there's a lot of that on Instagram in a minute, but you have to fail to move forward. Like I think I've said this in a previous podcast about Michael Jordan said, like obviously he took let's say he missed 10,000 shots. Like that's how he became so good because he don't
remember the shots you've missed.
No,
I think a mistake's worthwhile if you learn from it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the biggest sort of thing for me. Like, if there's any guys listening now that are like, "What's the number one take home from this?" Is like, obviously, failure is part of it, and you've got to fail to understand your successes.
There's a real stigma around failure as well, from a commercial side and a personal side of it. There really is. But I think you've got to don't accept failure, but just make sure you learn from it. I've failed massively with some of the things I've worked on.
Yeah.
As long as you can learn from it and move forward, then it's a good thing.
There's a book I read actually because I can read probably about 2 pages a day.
Questionable.
No, I can read, and it was actually this part of the book was about this study that was on the children in the school, and it was like they went around the class and was like, right, we've got this test, and there's like a really hard test. Like, what do you want to do? And most of the kids were like, yeah, I want to do the really hard test, and if they failed, they were saying they took each kid and put them in front of the test, and they could not believe the resilience of the kid and how much they couldn't care about the failure. Like if they failed it, oh gosh, come on, I want to have another go. I want to have another go.
Really good.
And when you're a kid, that's what happens, isn't it? And I think as you get to an adult, you are embarrassed. Yeah. Me at the ski slope the other day, I'll tell the story. Go to the ski slope. My mate's like, right, we're going skiing in a couple of weeks. You need to learn how to ski. I was like, all right, no worries. Maybe I should get lessons. Nah, you'll be fine. Come on, mate. Let's go to the Snow Dome. Yeah, let's go. Sorry, Snow Dome, if I broke the rules. But so he's like, right, we get there. He goes, right, just follow me. Yeah, and he's talking quietly. He don't want none of the instructors to hear that I've not skied before. So I'll tick the waiver. Yep, ski, stop, turn, whatever, fine. So we go up, we get the skis on. I said, mate, how do I put the skis on? It's just like your cycling boot, mate. Just clip it in. So I clip him. And I'm like, oh, trying to really get a feel for my feet on the snow, yeah. And I'm like, oh, this ain't great. And he's like, yeah, just come up the top. So anyway, I get this thing between my legs. So I'm going up, and I'm like, oh man, like this is terrible. Like I've got to get down from here. So we get up there. I nearly fall off the ski lift as I get to the top. Nearly crash into the wall because I didn't know how to stop. Again, trying to get a feel for it. So I stand up top, and he goes, right, I'm going to go and do a run down there, and just watch me, and I'll just freshen myself up, and I'll come up. So I'm up there, and I'm looking around at mate, and I'm like, yeah, love skiing, mate. Been here loads of times. Snow's mega, mate. It's high. I'm right at the top. Right at the top.
200 metre run or something like
yeah,
that?
probably 100 metres maybe. I don't know what it is. I'll have to find out the stats. Anyway, I'm up there. I think, and I'm moving my feet around, and this guy must just be looking at me thinking, you have not skied before, mate.
He can tell.
But I'm going to let you go down anyway because it'll be hilarious. And my mate goes, right, yeah. So he comes back up. And he's like, right, just bend your knees, mate. Yeah, like bend your knees like this and just lean forward, yeah, and just turn. It's so easy. Mate, so I go off this top bit, yeah, and I just pick up speed. I don't know what to do. I start leaning back. Obviously, I'm just picking up more speed. I'm parallel. Smash, I go down, and I just think to myself, like, yeah, this is not for me. It took me about 15 minutes, genuinely, to get down. Got down, argued with the guy, because I was like, mate, I'm not going back up. He was like, no. I was like, no, I'm not going back up.
You got that video that's going around about the guy who's going up on the ski lift, and he just takes out everyone because he comes off the ski lift.
Honestly, mate, that would be you, that would be me next week when I'm out in France. Oh. But I can't remember what we were talking about that. I just needed to get that story in there. Oh, failure. I was so embarrassed that I couldn't eat. I wanted the snow to melt and just fall through the building. I was so mortified, and I was like, mate, like you have to learn. And but I think that's what I'm saying, like the stigma of like even in business, like people are so scared of failing because they wouldn't want to tell their friends that they failed or their wife or their partners or whatever. And I think, yeah, it's such a big part, even like racing. Like I would like to say that being proactive with a failure, it's like, right, I've done that. Why did that happen? How can I learn from it? Right, let's move forward. And I think, again, like if there's any young athletes listening, like that's a big part. It's a big part of racing. And I think you have to fail. It hurts, unfortunately, with motorbike racing, but that's the job that you want to do, isn't it? And you've picked, and you have to roll with the punches as such, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the most important thing to take from anything from a young athlete is that you got to get going.
Yeah.
The worry of getting it wrong is far worse than actually getting it wrong.
Yeah. Right. So a question
Yes.
I wanted to ask you is our track review, and if there's any listeners out there, I would like to get some sort of name for it, and I've not been creative enough in naming this, so I've literally just called it track review. Buchan's track review? No, don't know. Need any listeners? Send in your answers because I need a name for it. Anyway, this is quite a funny section because it applies to everybody in motorsport and racing. I actually asked Steph the question last night, and she gave me some funny answers.
What was the answer?
It was Alton Park, and most memorable moment was my big concussion there. I said, great. Lovely.
She remembers it, you don't.
Yeah, thumbs up. Yeah, I don't remember it. Right, so obviously we're going to start. Yeah. What's your favourite track?
Spa-Francorchamps.
And what is your most memorable moment of that circuit?
98 Grand Prix, Formula One, the start, the first abandoned start when it was pouring down the rain. They would not start a race in these conditions now in any form of sport.
So it's a lot of water down.
It was Aquaplane Central.
Yeah.
And came out the first corner, down the hill, ready to go into Eau Rouge and Raidillon, and Coulthard got it totally sideways, hit the barrier on the inside, came back across the circuit, and it was like a 15-car pile-up. Thankfully, everyone was all right. It was before they had the tethers that held the wheels on. Wheels were flying into the crowd. It was the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen. The legendary Murray Walker commentating on it as well, which made it even more exciting.
I bet Murray was losing it.
Yeah, I was like a 13-year-old at home.
Yeah, he was
like,
exciting as well, wasn't he?
Amazing.
Yeah, his commentary.
So yeah, that was pretty wild. Pretty wild Grand Prix, and then they actually restarted the race, and I think all bar one person started the race again, but just because they didn't have a spare car for them.
Oh my god!
But everyone restarted the race, and it was mental.
And what's your favourite part of the track? I probably know the answer to that.
Eau Rouge and Raidillon. So
really,
the fast uphill section onto the Kemmel Straight is absolutely mental. The compression is in anything in a Formula One GT bike. It is just the most unbelievable elevation, and yes, wild.
I'd love to have a little ride there. Actually, I've never ridden that, so I know they do some track days there. That's on my bucket list to ride that circuit.
The bucket list.
Yeah, the bucket list. Any tips for any track day riders that go there? What's your track dates?
It's all about the exit. The
Yeah.
Kemmel Straight is
It's got to be in it.
long.
Yeah.
You can sacrifice entry speed and mid corner speed just because the compressions are insane.
Going to get you on the simulator in a minute, so I want to see how good you really are, because you've talked a good game now.
Full gas.
You've talked a good game. So
I'm like a proper, like a football
Racing
managers.
driver.
The best
Yeah.
football managers, not necessarily the best players.
Yeah.
That's
So
me.
that's the tip then. That's the top
That's
tip.
it. Top tip.
That's the top tip.
All about the exit.
Obviously, like, we're both parents. If you was going to get your kids into motorsport racing, where'd you begin with it? Obviously, there's so many different avenues. I don't want Brody to race motorbikes. Brody, if you listen to this in like 12, 13 years' time, I don't want you to race motorbikes. You might already be semi-professional at this point.
I'd let Oscar
Yeah.
have a go just because I know he would be terrible because he thinks about it. He's a bit of a
Thinker.
he's a bit of a shy when it comes to things like that, like I was as a kid, like a young kid. So I reckon he'd have a go of it and give it up.
Mate, how I got into it, I literally just got on. My dad bought me a motocross bike. I'd tried various different sports and didn't get on. Like, went to football, and my dad's like, "Why aren't you chasing the ball, mate?" I said, "Because all them are." And he was like, "Okay, football's not for you
That's a
then."
great
All right, we'll go
answer.
go-karting. Went go-karting.
Although if Oscar give me that answer, I'd be
Yeah, I
screwed.
was literally just tearing in a straight line. I'd just spin the cart out, and my mum was like, "You can't."
Same
Like, it
as now,
doesn't.
then.
Yeah, basically, but just on two wheels. And then we went motocross. Got a motocross bike. Went to a field and just rode round. And I was kind of a bit nervous, and my sister jumped on it, flying around. My older sister, and then I was like, "Right, give me that back." And that is literally where the love of racing come for me, like the motorbikes. And then I done my first race. And I mean, like, for me, like, if I was looking at getting my child into it, like, we got into it because my dad wasn't very close with his dad when they were younger, and he didn't want that with us. So we got into motorbike racing, and obviously have been sort of like inseparable till now. He's still obviously a big part of my career. And so
pretty much every event, fully involved.
Such a family event, like even racing now, obviously it's less so family orientated because obviously you've got such an important job to do. You can't really be that way. But when you're in your younger years, it's such a family thing. Like, you go away in the motorhome, you go camping, like you're away. It's like, like when I look back at the years,
Great
like,
memories.
Yeah, and I think it's so important for kids as well. It gives kids such a, like, I had the option of going out with my mates or going racing, and my dad was sort of like, "Mate, you can't do both. Like, if you want to go racing tomorrow, you can't be out till midnight. So what do you want to do?" And it taught me so much about who I was and what I wanted to achieve at quite a young age, and the pressures of, like, growing up, like obviously going out, drinking and all that kind of thing. And I didn't have any interest in it. And I kind of although I've had a rough ride with broken bones, as most probably like motorsport athletes in motorbike racing, especially.
Yeah.
But I would do it all again because what it gave me and what it taught me the life lesson. So
I think from that side, my thing for any parent would be that first of all, their child's got to want to do it.
yeah,
Like, that goes across any sport.
Yeah.
Really. As much as you want to get your kids active and involved in sport, they've got to want to do it.
yeah, definitely.
That's the first thing. And enjoy it, especially in them early years, because it becomes so competitive. My personal view on it is that they should, the main part of it should just be the enjoyment first of all.
Yeah, 100%.
Obviously, as we talked about before, you want to win. That makes it more enjoyable. I tried to stress that
Yeah.
to Oscar in
Yeah.
any sport. I was like, it's great that you enjoy it, but you'll
Yeah.
enjoy it even more when you win.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, so it's right, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And
It's
I
10
enjoy,
push-ups now.
I enjoy it so much more as well.
Yeah.
So there's that side of it, and then I think from the taking the emotional side out of it is then just make sure you do enough so you've got a plan, and I mean that in terms of like the next 3 years, so you've got realistically, because what you really don't want to do if you can help it, you don't want to be in a position where your son or your daughter falls in love with a sport, and then God forbid, just purely from a funding perspective, they then can't make the next step. So at least try to get yourself in the best position possible, whether that's for your own finances or finding partnerships and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That would be my probably, commercial head advice as a parent.
Yeah, and it just teaches you. Like I think the older you get, the more you kind of look back and reflect on like the person you are and who you like, the person you've become. And these are questions I ask my guests on the podcast, and it kind of makes you look at yourself. And it's like when you look at how, like, I'll take me personally, like how I manage stress now and deal with like stress and anxiety. Which let's face it, everyone's talking about anxiety. I get anxiety, but I kind of manage it in a different way probably to other people as other people manage it differently to me. But the sort of the things that motorbike racing has taught me in terms of like the anxiety, like I remember being sick in my crash helmet like 8, 9 years old because I was so nervous for a race.
But nerves are normal.
Yeah,
you know?
but it was kind of like, oh my God, I'm so nervous. But you learn to manage that. I can't be sick every time I go out, mate. Like you got to pull yourself together. And it was kind of that conversation myself at that age. And I think I'm so thankful to have done what I've done in those years. And I'm so thankful my dad pushed me because it has made me the person I am now. And like, if there's people out there that are thinking, oh yeah, you know what, I'm thinking about getting my kids into motorsport. Obviously, it's a very dangerous game. Let's not hide away from that fact. But it is there's so many pros to it. I would probably say the pros outweigh the negatives for me and my life. You know, like I look at Brody and think I'd rather him get into something like golf or tennis.
My mum used to put it in a really good way. It's like, you know, people used to ask her, oh, like, you know, like motorsport's dangerous, and she'd well, like, why would I stop him from doing what he wants to do? You know, that, you know, you have to, you know, as much as from a parent's perspective, your natural thought is to protect your child, but then also as well, you want them, you got to remember you can't live their life for them.
Exactly.
You know, and I think motorsport has given so much to me and my family already as well. You know, even at such, you know, and you at such a young age as well. And it's amazing seeing, you know, people come in the paddock and, you know, you see the same faces. It's such an incestuous business as well. There's so many different places you can go. You'll just bump into people 10 years later. And funny enough, you're both still involved in the industry. It's a beautiful, you know, like you said, that the time that you get with family away,
yeah, it's amazing.
Whereas you probably wouldn't spend that time together. You'd be doing individual things at a weekend. I think that's a really cool part of motorsport as well. Yeah,
and let's touch back on, obviously, I said before about like being involved in motorsport. Like, why should companies, like if a company sat in front of you and said, why should I be involved with supporting athletes? Like whether it's British Superbikes, whether it's British touring car, whether it's go-karting, motocross, like what's your, because we have this big thing on, like, people go, oh, hello mate, can I have some money? Like
yeah.
There's so many different ways of working together with companies, isn't there?
Absolutely. I think
if you own a business, I guess what I'm trying to get out of this is, if you own a business and I want to get into motorsport, I don't know where to start, but yeah, I want to sponsor athletes. Like why should they?
I think there's a couple of different reasons why businesses should and do get involved in motorsport. There's either the commercial side of it, so they see it as a great tool to promote their business. You know, you'll hear the phrase return of investment, but that's all relative as well. It doesn't necessarily have to mean selling product. So I think motorsport is such an amazing, especially UK motorsport, for instance. I'll give, you know, a perfect example is that if you look at the League One football, Championship football, the average attendance for a home game is significantly less than what it is for a BSB race. So in terms of audience-wise, you know, the average attendance for a BSB round is over 35,000 people per event, which is, you know, an amazing captive audience.
Yeah.
You know, that's not necessarily then even going across from, you know, social media, TV audiences, etc., which spans another, you know, good few million people that see it. So from a commercial perspective, there's a huge, huge market of potential customers that they can use motorsport for at relatively a cheap price compared to what it would cost you to communicate with that same audience or level of audience in other sports. Generally, you know, there is that. The other side of it as well is to talk, you know, to support and help support athletes, because it is a very, very different sport to others. Whereas a £20,000 investment for a business to a young athlete in another sport would go towards their lifestyle, as opposed to a £20,000 investment in a young athlete looking to make it in motorsport would go to help further in their career. I think that's a big thing. So if you either want to use it as, you know, you can use it on both sides, to be honest. Some use it for one, some use it for other, some use it for both. But I would say generally that would be my two main aspects. One, because of the commercial value it can really give. And secondly, it's actually providing an opportunity for an athlete, because we talked about there isn't those government funding. There isn't many opportunities and the funding available. And it's so you've got not enough funding and it's a more expensive sport. So there's a huge gap where, you know, commercial businesses can actually help fill that gap.
Yeah, and I think it's a great place to just be and to have a presence in terms of business to business. Like, there's a lot of companies there and
Absolutely.
a lot of successful individuals in their own right that go racing, that love it. And I guess for me, like, what I always thought when speaking to companies was, I think speaking to the public as an athlete for a company instead of the company speaking to the general public. I think that being that kind of middleman has always been quite a good way of communicating as well to different people, whether it's the general public or whether it's other businesses. I think being that sort of middleman, like the bridge, if you like, I think that's always been quite a good thing. And I've always sort of taken that responsibility of like, I can really sort of push that, like that person's, like I'm an ambassador for that company, they're giving me money, but why shouldn't I give that business to other people? Because I think that crossover is such a key thing.
Yeah,
and I think,
definitely.
And I think, the more, if we took the BSB paddock just for an example, if we got more companies involved, it's only going to help the BSB paddock's profile anyway, which is obviously quite high. So I think, and it really excites me actually, the commercial partnership side. I mean, I quite enjoy discussing opportunities with different companies, and there's quite a few teams in the paddock that obviously have that corporate image, and I think it's a good thing for businesses to be involved in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's another avenue that it gives for businesses. Like you talked about the networking opportunities and being involved with other businesses, like-minded businesses or totally different businesses to your own, because it's such a relaxed environment. It's a competitive environment, but very relaxed in terms of a lot of people that are involved in it enjoy the sport, but also as well, or have become fans of the sport. You'll be very hard pushed to find someone who got involved in motorcycle racing from a commercial side of it and then didn't become a fan. Yeah. And then, that for me is a great thing to see, how you're able to then network and actually open up the opportunity. It's a great day. Like people talk about going to the racing.
It's mad, yeah.
Not many people are jockeys or horses, but people love going to the racing.
Yeah.
Just because of the atmosphere. It's brilliant. And I think not because it's become quite expensive to go to and stuff like that, especially the main events. There's so many people that, just a trip down to Brands Hatch or Donington or Alton Park or Knock Hill, for a weekend of racing. You don't have to know anything about the sport.
The environment, just being there, the sound,
brilliant.
the smell, the everything in it, like the whole environment, and like even taking the family down there, it's mega, isn't it?
I think as well because most of you guys and girls that ride the bikes are very relatable
and accessible. You're not miles away. It's not like being at MotoGP where everyone's locked behind.
Well, you don't. There's not many athletes that get interviewed whilst they're standing on the field of play.
This is at BSB and the British Superbike Championship. Yeah, obviously most of you guys
just as you're about to go down to the front. First corner.
Yeah, and that's something as well, like for the young guys listening, like when you have to learn to do the media and race, it's a difficult crossover. But guys, it gets better.
Yeah.
It gets easier. But before we finish up, I have got 5 questions to test your motorsport knowledge. These 5 questions have been mastered up by myself. And like when you got a bit of time, mate, it's really good. I just sit there and I'm like, right, I want to make these questions hard, but not too hard. So
this is difficult for me because I pride myself on having a good motorsport knowledge.
You do.
And I'm probably going to get 5 wrong.
You're probably going to get 5 wrong. I'll tell you what we're going to do then, because I'm confident we'll do like a tenner each way. No, I'll say that as well. I'd love to. I'm going to have to start bringing like 50 quid here and just get the guests to bring 50 quid. And then we're going to have to, I'm not sure if we're allowed to do that. We'll have to talk to Ben about that. Anyway, right, here we go. This is question number 1. Again, I need a name for this. Buchan's. No, it don't really go, does it? Right, anyway. What Spanish rider has won a 125cc MotoGP championship and a World Superbike championship?
Schwamir?
He might have done, I don't know.
Oh, I bet he does.
But this is specifically a World Superbike championship.
Oh, World Superbike championship.
And a 125cc MotoGP championship.
Oh, Spanish.
Recent world champion.
Batista.
Yeah. I'll give you a tip there.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
Which manufacturer has won the most MotoGP races?
Yamaha.
Honda. Oh, it's another 10 in my way.
How many? By how many?
I don't know the number. I just know the answer. 2. How many driver championships have Red Bull Racing won?
Driver
championships?
6.
And how many constructor championships? This is for a bonus.
5.
Yes, come on. This one's probably easy. The Marina Bay circuit is the street circuit for which country's Grand Prix?
Abu Dhabi. Oh, Marina Bay.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got a mind blank. Oh, no.
Come on. I'll give you
Singapore?
Yeah, Singapore, yeah.
I should know that. I've been there. Jeez.
And how many BSB championships did Kianari win?
That is a horrible question.
That's quite difficult, isn't it? He was so good. He's so successful.
3.
Yeah, 3, yeah. And do you know what bikes he won them on? I don't know. I'm sure it's like 2 with Honda and 1 with BMW.
No, BMW have never won a BSB.
Did they not? I'm sure.
Yet.
Did they not? Have they not won a BSB
I don't think
championship?
they've ever won a BSB championship yet.
I didn't even know that.
One on a Yamaha
Oh, I don't know this. You're gonna have to ask the
and 2 on a Honda. One on a Yamaha, 2 on a Honda. I'm
don't know.
pretty sure.
I've not even got this written down. This was literally just me off the top of my
Is that 'cause
head.
I got so many right.
Yeah, so many right. Well, that's it, mate. That's all I've got. I mean, that was a good conversation. I mean, I'd just like to. Yeah, I mean, I'd love just to have people understand. I guess what makes the show function, really, isn't it? Because obviously, like the investment and companies being involved in motorsport is obviously a big part of how it manages to run.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for any younger athletes out there, it's really important just to be quite bespoke. You know, don't just approach people, say, can I have money?
Yeah.
And this is what I can give you. It's about asking questions for a business. You know, ask them, you know, who you're, or have an idea. You know, if you know that people sell bike cleaning gear, you know that 85%, sorry, I should say, of the audience that watch BSB own a bike. You know that, you know, it's pretty easy to do the maths of work out how many potential customers you can put them in front of and then talk about the different things. You know, try and be a little bit creative. Try and have fun with it.
Yeah.
Try and have fun with it because that's what businesses want.
Yeah,
you know, we talked about there's so many different ways that people can digest information at the moment. You have to try and be a bit fun about it. Yeah. And that will then put you in good stead for like you, for instance. You know, one of the great things that a lot of our partners talk about is that why the reason they work with you is because of your personality and the way that you're relatable.
It's fake. It's fake, mate. Fake personality.
Fake.
Persona.
Just keep it up though, mate.
In 20 years' time, people are going to say to me, is your persona real? I'm going to say, no, it's fake, mate, the whole thing.
Just keep it up for a couple of more years.
Yeah, no, it's not. And I think something I'm quite passionate about and quite, like my opinion's quite strong on is be yourself. Like, if you are shy and nervous, don't try and be cocky and funny. Like, be yourself. And I think that's something that's quite, because people can see it. Like, you know, there's been various riders over the years that have tried to be really funny on the grid, and you're like, mate, like, it's so forced, it's embarrassing. Exactly, like me. And I think you've just got to be yourself. Like, just be yourself. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you're thinking about getting into motorsport, anyone listening, get yourself along to a BSB race. Have a look, get stuck in, because I think
ask people. Get along to a BSB race, get along to a club race. Check out the calendar. We'll see when your next local event is, and there's a load of play. I think there's over 5,000 motorsport events happen in the UK a year, so there's enough opportunity for people to go along to stuff. So yeah, get involved, guys.
Thanks for coming on, mate. That is the end.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Pushing the Limit podcast. Obviously, keep an eye on the socials for next week's guest, and hope you enjoyed it.